Hello, I'm Verdi Arbusto, and this is the Schumann Resonance Harmonics channel on YouTube and Facebook. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate all the comments, the feedback I get from everyone. If you're new here, first off, welcome. Thank you for being here. Like, share, comment, subscribe. And as a YouTube public service notice, if you want to see more videos from me and from your other favorite YouTubers, make sure you go to their channel and boost up their algorithm. Comment, share, subscribe, do different things. Get the person to, give you a thumbs up. That's important as well. Not all of them do that as well. So that's a public service announcement for you to, see more of your favorite channels. Now, knowing that, hopefully you will do that with me in my comments and come to my live stream and make comments and feedback. I appreciate it, and I answer all my comments and the questions. I answer the questions to the best of my abilities. I don't always reply to comments. Not everything needs my, said back to it. Okay. All right. So with that disclaimer out of the way, let me get right into the material. Little to no music this time. I want to get into the actual material. So, without any further ado, I'm going to start reading, and I will see you in a bit. All right. So the name of this is essentially we are answering the question, what is 5D? Okay. So I've seen that often enough in comments. You may or may not have seen that. I don't know who or what you are, where you've been, but you will have likely seen that or will see it in not too long. If you are in this kind of ascension community and you are one of us, you'll see this phrase, 5D. And so I'm answering the question, what is 5D, from a number of different levels of perspectives. And so this will be the fourth video in this series, which is addressing, what is 5D on a few different levels. And this is the WordPress blog link. I have, for all the videos that I do, I try to have, it's been my habit now. Actually, hold on, let me talk to you face to face. All right. So it's been my habit now at this point that I want to make the text, the what I talk about here in the video, the content of the video, in a written form, so you can read it at your leisure. I'm only allowed, so many words, 5,000 characters in the description. Not everything fits. So I have been making for a few weeks now, I've been putting a WordPress links up so that you can get the full totality of the script. Like most of the time I'm going with a script. So you can get the full totality of the script in the WordPress link, generally. That's the stated intention of why I'm doing that, for free. And along with that, you will get the, generally speaking, the picture, the thumbnail that I'm using to go with that. And theoretically, on Patreon, I have to smile because I'm not doing this as much as I should, you will get the full text in the description for the link with the video as well. Okay, so that's a reason for being on Patreon, is you get all of it at one shot. All right, when I do that, I haven't been doing. All right, so, all right, where are we? All right, so, all right, and I got to write more about this. All right, so video one focused on density versus dimension, and essentially, as a reminder, dimensions are the formless. They're foundational, but they have no form. They're of the mind, of temporal. It's the ability, to completely work in the abstract, the ability to understand, or half of your mind to understand the mind of God. Okay. All right. So that's in video 1. In video 2, we discussed the concept of dimensionality as moving between dimensions and, establishing what dimensions are outside of, boom, video 3, the builder's paradigm. So in that video 3, we start going into a small historical perspective on how we got to where we are now. All right. And I should be where we are now. Okay. And so, all right. Excuse me. Okay. So in this one, we're going to look at dimensions from the perspective of the function of dimensions. I'm not even sure what I meant when I wrote that. All right. What's meant by 5D? Is that fifth density or fifth dimension? I hear this regularly with phrases such as, well, I know I'm not in 5D, but... All right. So I'm going to pause the lesson here for just a second. Regularly, in the comments, in written places, I see a discussion, a query, an asking, an answering, a discussion, a dialogue, all that on 4D, 5D, 6D, 7D, all of this. Okay. It's a regular thing that in this community, that if you're around long enough, you see it. It is its own thing. It becomes a very common point of mark of distinction, a badge of honor, badge of distinction to talk about, well, I'm living in 5D existence and all of this. And without being the judge of the veracity, without being the evaluator of whether or not this statement is true, because I don't really care, doesn't really mean anything to me. When I hear that, I kind of chalk it up to, it's at the point now a lot of people need to know these answers and need to know this information. So, as I've shared before, when I personally, from my own self, when I hear and see, written down, the phrase 3D or 4D or 5D, etc., I have a much different perspective on that, a much different take on it, much different conceptualization of realization of processing of what all that those phrases mean to me personally and to what's happening than they do to other people. Okay. And there is a commonly held assumption between the masses of people of what those phrases mean. And so this is what we're looking at here of analyzing and evaluating that, rhetoric, basically, of what's 3D, 4D, 5D. Okay? I think that's the simplest way to put it. All right. So, I see that all the time, that people, compare. That's a comparison. They're kind of down on themselves, and they say, oh, I know I'm not in 5D yet, and like, well, I don't know. How do you know? What? How are you? Where's your count starting? That's my first thought. You talk about 4D or 5D, it's like, where's your count starting? Anyway, all right. Onward and upward. Back to the text. Where am I? Let me find my cursor here. All right. Okay. One feels that, as you read these comments, like I said, dovetailing off of what I've said already, as you read the comments, there is a commonality of I guess, misunderstanding of when people use the phrase of what they mean, and all of this. And as I reflect and intuit what people are saying, I get the impression that fifth dimension is, like an actual place. We're somewhere where we're going to be arriving at, like on the other side of, on the other shore, the other side of something, some imaginary, I don't know, right? I don't know before that, because there's an invisible sort of barrier, length, height, width, what the fourth dimension, 4D, and then 5D, which is, heaven. I think this is what I'm trying to wrap my head around, and I'm not. How do I say this? This is one of those things. Excuse me. That I don't. I'm looking at it, and I'm analyzing, and I'm kind of processing, and I don't proclaim this so much as I'm asking. Right? Because this is all new territory, and even though I've been around enough to know what the kind of the wave is, as the wave of potential, as I have talked about this, with human affairs, oftentimes you get someone that really kind of has figured it out. Then you would have people after that follow, the innovators and then the imitators, as it were, because not all humans are able to be creative and to create stuff and to be brilliant, and and so you have a lot of people that are on the coattails of that wait for the next big thing, and then they kind of ride after that, So that's sort of what this is as well, in principle, is that, well, who knows? I don't know. I thought you knew, right? Oh, I thought you knew. I knew, right? And so then you get someone who actually does know a little bit, and they, oh, wow, so oh, wow, so, okay, let me know. And then sort of on this goes. And so when we have this discussion on 3D, 4D, 5D, what does it mean? To me, that's what I'm saying here. What does this literally mean? As if someone was asking me, in the sense, how would you start a fire out in the woods and not burn the woods down, right? Like, that's part of it. That's an analogy, but okay, that's part of it. How do you go out into, what does that mean? How do you go out into the spirit world? How do you go off into this ascension and not lose your marbles, right? That's, how to kind of line up apples to apples there. And so, like, there is a big demand for people keeping the ability to keep their sanity. I don't know the best way to put that, but that's part of what, a lot of this is that people lose their shit, basically lose their marbles. They don't know where to go, where to turn to, and as all of this breaks down and makes less and less sense, there needs to be something there in place that people can turn to and look at and have refuge in. And that's part of why I'm here doing this now, doing this lesson now, even though it's not really ready for public, broadcast. It's like, it's ready enough, forget the spinning wheels and don't worry about the hot wax, just get it done and get it out the door. Like, all right. And so that's sort of where I'm at. Don't worry about the hot wax, get it out the door kind of phase of this, that, all right, we'll work with what we got. And that's why I post this as a video, right? This is what the process is I post it as a video so you can have the hardcore information there. You see it, I'm going through it with you, you're working through it, we're developing what the information really properly should be. That's why we're doing this. And then we're doing a live stream so that we can ask and answer questions specifically related to this, so that you're able to process what's here, because this is really intense kind of stuff, and hopefully there's some music in there to make this feel a little bit better as well. All right, so I'm just right now at this point in the narrative, I'm asking, I'm addressing the fact that a lot of people are asking this question: what does 5D mean? And a lot of people have this idea it's something after like the physical, after you built a building and then you've traveled through the invisible time river, then it's on the other side. I think that's the fairy tale people have in their head of what 5D is, right? I'm not sure, but I'm, a consensus, general consensus, right? It's, you hear out there all the time, people are saying, they say often enough, this is what their version of 5D is. Like, all right, like, I'll go with that. All right. And so this is what my version of 5D is, but much of this was provided for me when I was a teenager. Like when I first hit puberty, 13, 14, it opened up. And then recently there's been some cherries and sprinkles on the top that's made it a lot more cohesive, so you all can understand it. Like, but a lot of this core stuff I knew 30 years ago, right? So now you get to have the benefit of my insanity back as a teenager. It seems easy enough to say, we're moving through this, like I'm, like all these expressions. I'm not gonna go through them. Hopefully you've heard them enough yourself. We're moving into 5D and all of this, the ascension river floating, we're blah blah blah. Yet, what does it actually mean? What does this actually mean? In this session, I'm going to examine the concept of fifth dimension, okay, from the perspective of the function of dimensions. At current, all right, so, hold on. Okay, so I did a little editorial surgery here. All right. So, for the purposes of our discussion, we call 5D fifth dimension. Third density and fifth density as concepts and conceptual constructs and metaphorical understandings are not discussed here. Okay. At current... let me just say, I'm at a certain point, I am going to go into what third density means and all of that. But first, the commonly understood part of 3D and 5D is third dimension and fifth dimension has to be addressed and dealt with and kind of knocked around, and to get you to kind of loosen up from that, holding on to that idea as solid detachment. You need to be that idea has got to be knocked loose, and your attachment released from this idea of 3D, 5D being the builder's, as I've discussed, the builder's paradigm, the builder's metaphor. They've given you as an imposition over your spiritual development. So it's really important first that you get the barnacles knocked loose and you unlearn some stuff that's been implanted in your head, like landmines, I guess, is a good, parasites or something. I'm not even sure what. But so we're just dealing with, if we're looking at 3D, 5D from the commonly held perspective of the dimensions and what they are and blah, 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 and all of the 3D explanation of 3D. I think that's a good way to put it. 3D explanation of 5D. That might be a good way to put it. Giving you two ways to put it. Like looking at this as 3D, 5D dimensions, third dimension, fifth dimension, is a bit like looking at it from behind the horse, trying to push the horse, if you will. Well, it might work, but it's probably not going to work. But that's generally speaking what you're left with here in the common Masonic grid, the Cartesian grid system that we've talked about before. And if you're, let me just pause this. If you're new here and you haven't watched the other videos, the other 3 videos in the series, go back and watch them so you understand. Because I'm not going to keep repeating, I can't keep repeating the same stuff each and every video and kind of give the same in-depth analysis of what, say, the Cartesian grid system is. So I've explained it, I've given a good solid introduction of what it is up to this point. So if this is the first one you've seen, go back and watch the other ones so you have a much better idea of what when we talk about the Cartesian grid system and why it's fouled up society, you have a better idea of that. All right. So, pushing the horse as opposed to leading the horse. And so one of the ways when we're doing this is taking you from behind the cue ball, the curve, as it were, so that you're burdened and what's the word? Embattled with, or you're burdened with the acquisition knowledge, the attainment and attachment knowledge of the builders of the grid system. So in order for you to understand the new system, something new, you need to unravel what's there and why it's been there and why it's been placed in order for you to get beyond that into the new system that's at foot or at hand or at wing or whatever have you. All right. Okay, so the lexicon. All right, so we've talked about the. All right, so I'm even going to put this. All right, I'm going to pause this for a sec, because I can. Okay, so we have. I've talked about the rhetoric and the meaning behind the words, and a lexicon is a shared vocabulary. Okay, I'll even highlight this. All right, so a lexicon is a shared vocabulary, us being together. Members of a group, members of a gang. There's code, there's slang, there's different types of, there's jargon, there's different types of, your professional, lawyers association has a certain set of a lexicon, a shared vocabulary, so they know what they're talking about internally. And there's different levels to this. It does different things, blah, blah, blah. But this is what we're talking about in this here arena. We need to have a lexicon, which is a shared vocabulary that we know what the word means for our usages and not what it means coming into this that, I think you know or you may know. It's like, no. Like, let's identify your terms. Exactly what are we talking about here? And that's what is really important, that unless you and the other person you're talking with in the comments that you're debating back and forth about the 3D, 5D, 4D, whatever D that it is, unless you have nailed down what your terms are, you're pissing in the wind. And that's what a lot of these, quite honestly, that's what a lot of these arguments are over, or discussions, heated discussions and back and forth about, well, you're not living in 5D if, or you're never going to make it to, or blah, blah, blah. That are really just, they're red herrings. They're just window dressing, because it really doesn't matter, because this isn't a race. This isn't like, this isn't the whether what 3D, 4D, 5D is. It's still not a race. You're not going to get rewarded for that wherever D you ended up. That's not how it works, because, quite honestly, you sort of don't know what that is the dimensions in there. You've only sort of been told by the schools and the churches some stuff to keep you down, and so it's sort of what hopefully what I'm doing here is giving you the missing information that should have been in place instead of the length, height, width paradigm of the builders of the 3D, basically confining your world as you've known it. And so we first need to, before we move on into the discussion of where are you in your ascension, of what D, if it matters, it doesn't matter, but where are you, okay, in your ascension, you need to have a common shared vocabulary, and that's one of the things that we're doing here. We're building here for those who have the ears to hear, for those who have the willingness to listen patiently to what I have to say, and those who are ready, the students who are ready, right? There's three kind of disclaimers, maybe, or three requisites right there that, you may not be ready for this. The teacher appears when the student is ready. And so my guides tell me there are people that are ready for this, and I have to believe it, and I can't hold on to this anymore. I have to release this out to the people. It's ready. So someone is ready for this. At least one of you is ready for this, because I was told you can't now. Now is the time, right? So that's what that principle means. I don't even know who it was. I don't even know who it was, but I know this video is meant for you. This was meant for someone. So they told me. Oh, hold on a sec. Wow, that was powerful. There is likely to be a number of people that benefit from this, but there's one person who, more than anyone, needed to hear this. It's what they have just told me. One has to believe, and belief may not be something that there is a proof for immediately, but in time it becomes obvious why things worked out how they did. And I will just tell you, just off of the teaching topic here, that to me 5D means you are there present, living in if it means anything at all, right? If it means anything at all, it is you living in the moment, as the moment occurs, where you need to be to be able to meet that person who's coming up down the road who needed your help. That's five dimensions right there. I am where I need to be at the right time, at the right place, with that right tool that will fix the problem. I caramba. I have a story. There was a story. I'm going to pause this and give a story that's just like relevant here. I've been working on, my spiritual progress for a while. All right. And at times I've been better able to be present for others, okay, to help them. But there was one time, I'm in Waterford. This is when I was probably about close to 20 years ago. Okay, my mother was still alive then. I had my grandmother's car. My grandmother passed away, but my mom was in that period between when my grandmother passed away and my mother was still living, but we had my grandmother's car. So I remember we were driving her car, and in Waterford, getting onto the highway, there's this crazy, it was like an afterthought. They put in a way station and they messed up the, the dynamics of how you got on the highway, and it screwed it up. And so, so there's just this wacky, short, quick thing. And then you had to hit the gas to get on the highway. It just was like accidents waiting to happen, put it that way. All right. So one time I'm with my mom. My mother was a, help others kind of person. So I'm with my mom, and I have, I carried tools, or had carried tools, like car tools, in my car at the time, as a rule of thumb. And in this particular case, I had a crowbar, a big crowbar. I was doing this was a job I was doing for my father at the time, doing some demolition, like sheetrock kind of stuff, or plaster, pulling plaster off of the wall. So, I had left the job. I had the crowbar with me for the, blah, 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 whatever. So, but that particular day, it was like a February, we were getting onto the highway, and there was a car full of people in like a Honda, little Honda, that you could see, there wasn't much snow on the ground, but they had caught that stupid, like egress or entry ramp onto the highway. They just couldn't make the 90-degree turn that they needed to. Stupid engineers, they just put it like that you have to stop and then turn, like this kind of thing. So they were going a little too fast in the condition, and they slid, and they wound up, the bumper of the car wound up underneath the metal guardrail. So they had a metal bumper and the metal guardrail. Oh my goodness. So it was like locked under there. Like you're not getting that out, because the metal had kind of bent and just bent perfectly under it. So it just bloop, it just was like, it's stuck there. You're not like pulling it out, like, and it's snow. You can't get any traction, and it's on a little bit of an incline. And so, so as we're going, I was going to an appointment with my mom. We're getting onto the highway. I see this. And I was like, I told my mom, hold on, let me, see if I can help him. I pulled the crowbar, that big ass crowbar, out of the trunk, and I just went over and boop, popped it out. Oh, it took like 10 seconds, if that. It just was like the toughest part was walking over to the car and not sliding. Popped it right out. Once I got underneath there, just popped it right out. I'm like, there you go, you are dialed in. And they were just like, wow, holy F. Like, I don't know how long they were there, probably not that long, but the odds that some random person who's willing to help, right? Random guy who's willing to help, first and foremost, that has the right tool, okay, that meets you when you need it. You least expect someone to be there. You meet them there, but ahead of it, because I had the crowbar. Of all the tools to have on my car at the time. And again, having a tool on my car was not a big thing. I've had, I got all kinds of, but at that particular time, the one tool, like a saw, that ain't helping. A drill, a screwdriver. What other tools do you got that aren't going to be helpful there? A little screwdriver? No, man, no, that little screwdriver ain't helping you. No, man, no. No, they had a little screwdriver there, and like, no, man, that ain't, no, man. Sorry to have to tell you this, but you're dead. You're dead in the water. You need a wrecker, and the wreckers might pull you out, but they're probably, they're just to come out there is $50 or $80 or whatever, and it's a couple hours on a snowy, wintry day in New England. Nah, man, you're waiting forever. They're not coming out. There's a lot of people are queued up. It's like 5 hours. Yeah, you're stuck there because everyone did the same thing as you. On the way there's 4 accidents. Just fender benders. We're like, oh yeah, okay. I worked at Sears at the time. My tires are good. I know my shit's good. My car's good, more or less. But I know my tires are good anyway. So like that's 5D living to me, right? Because anyone can do that. You just need to listen to the voice, the invisible tones in your head that tell you, direct you certain things. Usually they're good, positive things, and not the voices that tell you to burn someone's house down or something, for example, like that. There are voices that people hear. You may be tuning into demon radio, like that's a thing. But when you are on the right pathway and there's not a question, you're living on that kind of higher dimension, you know the difference between I don't hear voices that tell me to, burn down someone's house. Once I stopped drinking and doing drugs, those voices stopped, quite honestly. There's not a better way to put it. The voices that are telling me to do nasty, evil stuff, those aren't there anymore, and they probably never were there, but, so is it. All right, so, that's kind of what we're talking about, and, there's an unlearning that has to go on with the example I gave of the crowbar, that is the right time at the right place with the right tool to help the right person. Okay. So this is, I could just say that. I probably could end the video right at that point, right at this point here, and have made enough of a point to have said that you will be that person, but it's like, this isn't automatic. You have to want to, you have to want to be there at the right time, at the right place. You have to be willing to get pulled off of your schedule, right? It's not just a matter of, we're going into 5D. It's a matter of, well, do you want to be inconvenienced by it? I think that's, that may be, I think I may pause this and put that in there, as like the thing. Like, yeah, we may be going into 5D, but do you really want to be inconvenienced by that? Question mark. Actually, I think that's a good way to put that. There. We may be moving into 5D, but do you want to be inconvenienced by this inconvenient inevitability? All right, I think that's a good way to put it. I'll fiddle with that later, but I just want to bookmark that. So this is, it's important for you, for me, for a person to unlearn the bad information, the bad teachings, to disembark the ballast from the ship, the airship, so you can get elevation and height and spiritual growth and evolution in your spiritual walk, right? Which happens if you're an alive, living person and you're on the spiritual path, you don't get all set at some point. Even when you die, when you're passed on and you're no longer in human form, no, it still grows, it still goes, man. You're just in spirit form without a body. Now, first there's a period of growth, and then there's a period of reflection, right? That the place here on earth allowed a lot of growth. Then after that, there's a period of reflection. How did you do, considering the conditions around you, right? So that's part of what is the moving on, that you can't move, the harvest is that kind of, at the end of the growth period, and you pick the fruit, you're evaluating it. How did it do? That's part of the harvest before you can do the ascension, the next part, which is make a wonderful buffet of the fruits that you picked, Not all of the fruits of the labor are ripe, are have been worthwhile. Not all the fruit that's produced by people's actions are going to be, used, I think. I'm trying to keep it general, but I think you understand what I'm saying. All right. So the conversation of 5D, 4D, 3D is difficult for me, as it requires the people to unknow or relearn that which has been imposed by the original Masons, the original builders, teaching institutions based on the words and linguistic impositions upon students. And when I talk about the when I talk about the linguistic imposition of students, what I'm talking about here is the spell of the language, the spell of the vowel, which I will be getting into soon. All right. So there's essentially two-part process to this. First, you have to unlearn. You have to kind of attach. Right. By unlearning, what I mean is unattach yourself to the concepts that are there, given to you as the basic construct in the spiritual realm of your development as a spiritual person. Right. So essentially, how do I put this? Essentially, you can't look at your development in the spiritual realm from the same. You can't really look at your development in the spiritual realm in the same way that you would look at building a house, for example. I mean, you can, but it's not really the same thing, except if you consider that your body is the house and your body is the temple. You're physically building your temple, your physical body, before, first and foremost, your body, first your temple, before you get that right, get that proper, before you can move on to any spiritual work, right? Because the temple, the body is the temple. It's the seat of, the crown is called the seat of the soul, and that's where, you're the infinite sits there. Where you connect with the infinite is right there over the top of your head, right? That little energy space you have right to the top of your head. And so that is where the nexus of the invisible actually kind of touches and meets up with the physical, right? So, but you are not evolving out of your 3D body. You are evolving with your physical body, right? I think that's really important. A lot of people don't really kind of get this because there's a conceptual void there between the first three dimensions, length, height, and width, that we all know, and then you have this invisible time, and then you have magic, essentially. Like what is 5D? Can you come up with some other word other than heaven? Can you give me more words? Give me a picture, implant a picture in my head, so I'm, I don't know. But that's what we're working through now, is how to define these words with more words, but better words. Okay, so this right here is a practical guide to give you to understanding a different paradigm of what the dimensions and the densities are, but what dimensions and dimensionality is, Because if you think of this however you want, okay, however, as a suggestion, there are two kind of schools here. One is the density and the dimensions, and the other is the dimensions and dimensionality. Okay. So one is the pushing the horse from behind, and the other is pulling the horse with, the carrot, or the stick method and the carrot method. I think that might be a way to put it, And this is just kind of an analogy to make, but that's sort of the two ways to look at the two different, The part A is really where we're going eventually. But before we go into the dimensions and densities, we have to go all over the dimensions first, because that's the first most important primary thing that people have in their head is 3D equals 3 dimensions. Okay. And then 5D equals 5 dimensions. And what the F-bomb is that? All right. So first, before we can go further, there's a lot of unlearning that has to happen. And because this is substantial, I got to start this now, or had to have started it a couple of days ago when I did. Anyway. All right. So we are at the stage of restructuring our logical grid, starting with the language used in its construction, not constructioning. Okay. Okay, I just did a little word surgery on my piece. Okay, I think that as I look at what I have written down in my script, there's a lot here. So I'm going to actually end this right now as the end of part 4. And then kind of I'm just going to immediately jump into part 5, which is part of the same thing here. All right. I'm at like 45 minutes here. That's enough. I'm gonna kind of close this out and play some music. And I just want to thank you all for being here, and like, share, comment, subscribe, and I appreciate the comments from people because a lot of them give me some interesting things to think about and some feedback. And there's a lot of comments from people that give me a lot of love. They're just like, thank you. I appreciate this. And it's like, I really need that too. I really need people just to say thank you for what you're doing. I don't do it for the thanks, but it's like, how long can you keep doing the same thing without people saying, well, thank you, I appreciate it, And so I do get a good share of people that just comment in the comments, thank you. And I, I'll just give you hearts up for that, All right, so that's all for right now. I'm going to kind of end this with some music, and I'm going to scroll through the next lesson of where it is from 4 to 5, so you can kind of see where we're going with this. And I personally think that's a fun little component of doing this. There's not just playing the music while you're running through it, but specifically this, so that I can kind of give you a preview, because there's a good chance that what you see here is actually going to change a little bit from the next time, because I'm still working this. All right, so anyway, enough babbling on for me. So let's see what we got in music. Oh yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, this is a good Aaron mix. This is from like 2011 from Aaron. It's an Aaron mix from 2011. So I'm going to play it for about, I don't know, like 3.5 minutes, and then I'm going to close it out. So thank y'all for being here. Y'all are wonderful. Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.